season, including our major partner, CF Capital, our major principal partner, 1300 Firestar, and our many principal partners, including Realm Investments, New Quantum, Switch Telecom, Advanced Scan Solutions, Moore and Agnew Lawyers, Camden Building Group, Kappa, Deal Accounting, Dynamic Plumbing Solutions, Ice Cafe Venezia, Aegis, Kingsford Finance, Reform Credit, Proxy Law, PDG, ASA, Telegraph, Bank of Sydney, Cover4, Yanazaka Group, Gordoni Beta, Alpha Group, National Equity, Halifax Elevators, Woodard, Middleman Function Centre, Tax to Remember, and True Media, Intralot, Porsche, Alpha Facility, Halifax, and the Angelo Group. We thank you all for your wonderful support so far in 2024 with the big season ahead for everybody. Thank you.
In the beginning, there was two. Hey, Lucas and
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lakeside Stadium for this opening round NPL Victoria men's match between South Melbourne and the Melbourne Knights. The starting lineup for the visitors tonight, the Melbourne Knights: number 10, John Albano; number 9, Kieran Bramwell; number 2, Benjamin Currigan; number 6, Anthony Dizelle; number 5, Ivan Franjic; number 27, Joseph Franjic; number 7, Nick Law; number 13, Chris Oldfield; number 32, Thomas Zeni; number 4, Corey Sewell; and number 8, Steve White. On the bench for the Melbourne Knights, John Murdoch, Jack Morton; number 29, Saif Adine Saki; number 12, Felipe Sanchez; number 21, Jacques Wiseman; and number 23, Thomas Wandel. The starting 11 for South Melbourne this evening: number 1, Harvey Lopez; number 3, Jordan Lampard; number 4, Marco Jankovic; number 5, Jake Marshall; number 8, Mario Garcia; number 9, Harrison Sawyer; number 21, Ross Archibald; number 22, Max Nicola; number 23, Morgan Evans; number 24, Nahuel Lavanda; and number 27, Jack Painter Andrews. On the bench for South Melbourne, number 6, Lucas Inglese; number 7, Andy Brennan; number 11, Josh Wallen; number 16, Emil Pios; number 20, Willem Lejeune; and number 80, George Sinaris.
applause to remember the life of many players and officials of South Melbourne and the Melbourne Knights who have passed away since the end of the 2023 season. These include our very own championship winning coach Len McAndrew and club legends Costa Nestoridis and Takis Safopoulos. Thank you.
Hello everybody and welcome to a new year of NPL Victoria football in 2024. Lakeside Stadium is the location for tonight's season opener, and what better way to kick off the new year than with an original derby between South Melbourne and Melbourne Knights. My name is Nick Tabano and it's a pleasure to be joined here today by Victorian football expert Tamir Kulash for this game tonight. Tamir, it's set to be a cracker between two of last season's hottest teams, two sides, one in particular in South Melbourne, who made it all the way to the grand final, and Melbourne Knights embarking on a bit of a new era under a new coach this season.
Yes, most definitely, and two teams with a lot of history going back to the National Soccer League, and even before that, as South Melbourne prepare to welcome former captain Brad Norton to toss the coin ahead of the game.
Of course, we had a minute's silence as well to commemorate all the former South Melbourne officials, players and coaches, and Melbourne Knights players, officials and coaches who passed away in the off-season. Of course, today a lot of new faces on both teams, and we'll take you through the starting lineups very quickly. For South Melbourne today, Javi Lopez in goals, and in defence he's joined by Jordan Lampard, one of the new signings coming across from Green Gully, Marko Jankovic, gold medal winner Jake Marshall, new signing Ross Archibald and Morgan Evans, Mario Barcia, another one of the new faces, alongside Jack Payne-Andrews in midfield. And up front, Max Mikula, joined by two new signings, Noel Bernarda, and the new captain, Harry Sawyer, returning after a year and a half abroad playing in India and in Finland. Well, for Melbourne Knights, Ben Suri, his first game in charge since taking over from Ben Khan. In defence, Ben Carrigan, joined by Joseph Franjic, Corey Sewell and Ivan Franjic. In goals, of course, Chris Oldfield. In midfield, Anthony Giselle and Steve White. While in attack, Mitch Hoare, Gian Albano, Kieran Bramwell, and new signing Tommy Semi, who's come across from Altona Magic. And we're just about ready to go here. Astro Sakalis, tonight's referee. South Melbourne will be kicking from right to left in their traditional blue strip. And Melbourne Knights in their away kits, a grey kit tonight, going from left to right. All but set and ready to go here for the 2024 season opener here from Lakeside Stadium. Last season's runners-up, South Melbourne, back in action for the first time since their grand final heartbreak, and they get things underway. Of course, a big year for South Melbourne with what is looming next year, the impending National Second Division, and they're one of the foundation clubs that's a part of it. And now Melbourne Knights looking to break early. It's Tommy Semi. Looks to go on goal himself and just puts it wide. And an early warning shot there fired from the visitors.
Yeah, poor mistake there from Marko Jankovic. Misread the ball as it looped over him. And Tommy Semi, there's not too many men in the league who you wouldn't want to be racing down at goal than the Papua New Guinea international. He's lightning fast, and as he showed there, an early warning sign for South Melbourne to keep him quiet. Otherwise, could have easily been a Knights opener.
Well, Ben Suri, of course, the new coach of Melbourne Knights. To me, tell us a little bit about Ben. He's spent some time as a club legend here at Melbourne Knights, but tell us a little bit about Ben and his accomplishments here at the club.
Yeah, I think Ben would have arrived at Melbourne Knights either at the end of the 2000s or the start of the 2010s, and he was a long-time player at the club. Quite versatile, could play in the centre of defence as well as at the heart of that midfield, and he made Melbourne Knights one of the toughest teams to play against and break down. If you remember the back line and midfield that featured the likes of him, Tommy Uskok, Milan Batur. It was always a tough place to visit at Summer Street and to play against a player like Ben Suri, the Englishman, who has served as coach in the past on a temporary basis. He gets to roll full-time now. He's assisted by Craig Moore, who was assistant at Altona Magic last year, to John Markovsky, not to be confused with the former Socceroo, but a very experienced campaigner.
Well, for the first time as senior head coach, Ben Suri will have to contend with a Max Mikula throw, and he's got his man in the middle, Harry Sawyer. And we know exactly where this is going. Mikula launches it into the box, looking for Sawyer. Almost got his head to it. It's nodded clear and out for a corner. And we know how dangerous they are from those long throws, South Melbourne. For the last 2 years, ever since Max Mikula arrived from Queensland, his third year at the club, it's become really one of their biggest weapons has been the long throw.
Very Rory Delap-like.
Now Mikula standing over this corner. Swings it in towards the back post. Sawyer gets a head to it off the post. Oldfield paws it away. Calls it if the ball did cross the line, but the linesman untroubled on that far side. And it will be a throw-in, but Harry Sawyer showing what he can do in the middle. The South Melbourne players still protesting in the middle.
As South Melbourne supporters chant VAR, I think we're all pretty happy with no VAR at this level.
Well, it seemed like Chris Oldfield was a bit surprised with where that ball ended up. He just clawed it off the line. It sort of went in slow motion in the end, hit the post, and he was able just to palm it away at the last second.
And he clawed back as well, which gave the perception that it may have been over the line.
Well, play will continue. Mikula now with another long throw. Right into the area. Oldfield goes up to contest, comes out to Sawyer! And South Melbourne take the lead! The first goal of the 2024 NPL Victoria season comes from Harrison Sawyer. Welcome back to Lakeside Stadium.
Not the most exquisite of football, Nick, but you can't fault its effectiveness, and that's the thing about South Melbourne this year. Ajak Riak was a towering presence last year, but in Sawyer you've just got a different class of centre forward who is comfortable in the air and will do things like that on a regular basis. I think heading into this season, he's one of the favourites for the Golden Boot, and he started it off with a bang.
It is South Melbourne 1, Melbourne Knights 0.
Well, South Melbourne take the lead, and we know when they do get a lead, this is where they can do their best business in terms of being able to hold these leads. It's been a bit of a staple of the Esteban Quintas era ever since he took over. And Harry Sawyer, of course, left in towards the end of the 2022 season, signed for Jamshedpur in India, and most recently he's been playing for VPS in Finland, but made the return to South Melbourne in this off-season. He's got the captain's armband with Brad Norton departing at the end of last season, retiring from top-tier Victorian football, but of course playing for Essendon Royals in VPL 2 this season. And what a way to make your mark. Not even 5 minutes played, and Harry Sawyer is off the mark. And now Melbourne Knights, they've got some work to do to try and get themselves back into this contest.
And as a referee, if you've got doubt that you made the wrong call moments ago, it's nothing that eases your comfort levels than the team who was perhaps wronged scoring not long after, because they won't be complaining about whether the ball crossed the line anymore.
This is new look, sort of new look Melbourne Knights defence this year. Ben Carrigan coming in, former Bentley Greens player, was been there for a couple seasons, spent some time, of course, with Melbourne Victory as well. Playing it out wide to the left, it's Sewell, who puts the ball into the area, and it's cleared away there by Jankovic. Sawyer with some hold-up play, knocks it down towards Bernarda, but getting across there was White. White and Giselle, another year of those two partnering the midfield, the heartbeat of that Melbourne Knights team. Of course, last year, a very good year for Melbourne Knights, going all the way to not only the semi-finals of the NPL Victoria final series, but the semi-finals of the Australia Cup, where they fell to a 1-0 defeat to Brisbane Roar. Of course, it was Ben Kahn who was the head coach last season, but since departing for Brisbane Roar, and we wish Ben all the best as he takes some medical leave. Of course, the head coach of the Brisbane Roar A-League men's side, as the ball is chipped in And Javi Lopez coming off his line and collecting that with ease.
Gee, that feels like a long time ago, given what's transpired at Brisbane since, with Ross Aloisi departing, Luke Traney getting one game before he was let go, and then Ben Khan coming in, and now he's out the door there. Ruben Zatkovic has come in. And at Melbourne Knights, you've had just the one coaching change, but a greater sense of familiarity with Suri stepping up to be the head coach, and he's pretty much a part of the furniture at Melbourne Knights.
The Knights put him under all sorts of pressure, and Javi Lopez had to clear. It was both Albano and Bramwell putting all sorts of pressure on the South Melbourne defence. They look to play out, and playing with a bit of fire there, the South Melbourne defence. Even though they're leading, they have been tested a little bit defensively, of course, in the first minute. Tommy Semi putting an effort just wide.
So heading into the game, Nick, you and I were discussing whether South Melbourne were playing with a back four or a back five, and a lot of that depended on where Ross Archibald would be playing. And it looks like he's playing as that midfield anchor, that number 6, where we saw him play occasionally for Port Melbourne Sharks, particularly in previous seasons. For all the talk of Sawyer, Bernarda, and even Sian Kuba, who initially signed for South before joining Avondale quite late in pre-season, Archibald is one of the most experienced players in his position in this competition.
Ross Archibald has played at quite a few different clubs here in Victoria. Demir, of course, started with Melbourne City in the A-League and spent some time with Port Melbourne, Altona, Avondale.
Bentley Greens
was
of
course,
perhaps maybe his most effective spell.
Here's Albano looking to get forward. Collides there with Mario Barcia. He clears it away. Ball played over the top there and sets a task for Noel Bernarda against Joseph Franic. Bernarda does well. Sawyer looking to get through. Gets it behind Harry Sawyer. Brilliant save from Oldfield. And Harry Sawyer is off to a rocking start here at Lakeside Stadium. 3 great chances inside the opening 10 minutes. Has 1 goal to his name, but could very easily already have a hat-trick.
Yeah, it's a fantastic save from Chris Oldfield. One of the most experienced goalkeepers in this competition. I think he's been keeping in the top flight of Victorian football since 2012. Hume City, Avondale, Altona Magic, his previous clubs. He was steady between the sticks for Melbourne Knights last season, and a big part of their return to finals football for the first time since 2015. And he showed all his quality there to the Knights. Sawyer, his second of the night. And yeah, he just provides a more potent threat up front, Harrison Sawyer. We saw what he did in the 2022 season, and he's definitely one of those players who maybe is a bit too good for this level. Question mark as to whether he can, replicate much of his success at the next level. But with the NST right around the corner, Harrison Sawyer will definitely be a striker to keep an eye on.
Of course, has A-League experience as well, Harry Sawyer, spending time at the Newcastle Jets, and prior to joining South Melbourne, had a very good run at Gold Coast Knights. Deceptively quick for a big guy, Harry Sawyer, as well, as we saw as he got in behind both Franic and Carrigan. Here is Ivan of the Franic brothers. Joseph in the heart of defence.
And you never know what an NPL Golden Boot might do for your career. Obviously, we saw a couple of seasons ago with Harrison Sawyer, led to an overseas move. Last season with Jonas Markovsky, we saw it culminate with him landing an A-League contract.
Great little bit of interplay on that left-hand side, and in the end it was Evans getting across to put that ball into touch. Actually, apologies, that was Jack Paynter-Andrews. So Corey Sewell getting ready to take a throw on that left-hand side. Corey Sewell had a bit of an injury towards the end of last season, missed a lot of important football. He got back for that Australia Cup semi-final, albeit on the bench, but a very good signing at the start of last season from Bentley Greens, and has been there and done that in Victorian football. As a free kick's awarded there on that far side, and a good opportunity here for Melbourne Knights to test.
Good futsal player from all accounts as well.
So it is Ivan Franic coming across to take this free kick on the far side. Carrigan coming up from the back. There's, of course, Giselle in there as well. Corey Sewell coming in there too. We'll see what they can do from this set piece. Franjic whips it in. It's flicked on there by Hoare, and it's cleared away by Evans. Semi's there waiting for it. Plays it short to White. Franjic. White. Switching ball towards the left side. It's knotted clear, but Albano does well to lock it back in that area. Giselle going to cut it back towards Hoare, and it's cleared away by Evans. South. What's Mikola putting the Melbourne Knights defence under a little bit of pressure as Carrigan feeds it back to Chris Oldfield. Beautiful night for football here in the Melbourne CBD at Lakeside Stadium. This game, the South Melbourne, these home games have become a bit of a staple for season openers. Of course, 2 from 2 in their last 2 season openers as well. Demir beat Heidelberg 2 years ago here and survived the scare against Moreland City last year to win that game 2-1. Of course, Moreland City, that was their first game in the Victorian top flight in quite some time, and South had to come from behind to win that game 2-1.
And I think it's important for South to get the season off to a good start, particularly with these home games, which they, of course, front load, because they lose access to this facility for a few weeks with the Grand Prix right around the corner as well.
Well, if you did come into Lakeside Stadium, you are watching on and you have an earpiece here listening to us, you would have seen that the temporary seating is starting to be erected inside the car park. So, of course, a lot of early games here at Lakeside Stadium for South Melbourne. Premiers in 2022. Lost the grand final to Oakley Cannons. Last year finished second and lost the grand final to Avondale. Looking to go one better this year in what's looking like will be their final year in NPL Victoria before they're part of the NST, or at least the South Melbourne senior side. Albano under some pressure there, and he's forced to play it back to Carrigan. You can see South Melbourne looking to press and put that Melbourne Knights defence under some pressure as Oldfield hooks it up towards Bramwell. Well played there by Marshall. Archibald looks to try and win a big challenge there from Joseph Franjic. Goes through the back of Noel Bernarda, and that's a yellow card. Strong challenge there on Bernarda.
Yeah, it was one of those where Joseph Franjic may have gotten a piece of the ball, but in order to do so, he went straight through his man, and referee Astro Sakalis left with no choice but to award the game's first booking.
Obviously, South Melbourne have had a lot of departures. It's been a bit of a, I wouldn't say a huge upheaval in the off-season. They've kept a lot of core players, but one of those new players, Demir, is Noel Bernarda. Of course, coming across from Green Gully. Tell us a bit about Bernarda and what we can expect for those, I guess, who are tuning in haven't seen Noel Bernarda for the first time.
Yeah, Argentine playmaker who moved to Victoria in 2021 after impressing in South Australia with Metro Stars. We'll wait for this free kick to get taken before we continue on to Bernarda talk.
Barcia floats it in towards Marshall, gets ahead to it and into the side netting. It's a good ball from Mario Barcia and finding Marshall unguarded at the back post. Having a lot of joy from set pieces early, South Melbourne, and so far it was Sawyer early, but that time it's Jake Marshall.
Sorry to correct you, it was actually Marko Jankovic.
Sorry about
the
that,
number 4.
Marko Jankovic. It's the new season. Apologies for that.
It's all right. Yeah, Bernarda impressed with Dandong Thunder in 2021. Had a really effective attacking partnership with a former Knights striker in Hamish Watson. Spent the last couple of seasons in Gully and didn't quite replicate his best from that incomplete season with Thunder back in 2021, but he's definitely a player who many have earmarked as one of the competition's best attacking players. Even had a trial in the A-League with Central Coast.
Bramwell getting towards the byline, and sorry to cut you off there, Demir, and it's out for a corner. Kieran Bramwell breaking down that left. It was a good ball from Franjic, but the South defence was there to nullify that attack, and it's out for a corner.
I was just mentioning that Bernarda has had A-League trials with the Central Coast Mariners and Newcastle Jets. He's also Argentinian, like his compatriot Barcia, also a new signing, as is their coach, Esteban Quintas.
We have an Argentinian connection there, as you mentioned. Ball is floated in towards the back post, and it's Headed away there by Jordan Lampard, another of South Melbourne's new signings. Also coming across from Green Gully in the off-season. So spent time at Moreland City as well, Demir. Part of that team that fell so short of just short of promotion in 2018. Ball still in for now, but the flag does go up. It's out for a throw. But yeah, a lot of upheaval in this South Melbourne team. No Brad Norton, no Alan Webb. Ajak Riak, part of the departures as well. Liram Almazi, just to name a few. Yagub Mustafa as well departing. And of course, as you mentioned at the top there, Demir, Sian Cuba, who did sign for the club in the off-season, has since departed and joined Avondale. Franjic under some pressure there from Mikola. Oldfield clears that away first time. Franjic in the heart of everything early here, Ivan Franjic. Second season back at Melbourne Knights, and to play that one short to semi, but it's out for a throw.
It's good to see the likes of Ivan Franjic and Steve White. Not only are they involved with the senior side, but they also have a role with the broader football club, particularly the juniors, in a coaching capacity. It's really important that quality players like that can pass on lessons to youngsters. And you know, you look through Victorian football over the last 15 years, there aren't too many more accomplished players than Ivan Franjic. Of course, went to a World Cup, got an assist in that World Cup as well in that game against Chile, and has won multiple A-League titles.
Ball's crossed in there by Bernarda. Melbourne Knights just playing around with it a bit at the back. They're certainly playing with fire there, that trio of Hoare, Giselle and White, but they work their way out of it. Here is White. It's turned over. Lampard. Mikola just assesses his options and plays it back to Mario Barcia. Mario Barcia, this is his 4th year in Victoria. Of course, initially signed for Avondale, went to Oakley, spent last season at Bentley Greens, and now at South Melbourne. Won a championship as part of that Oakley Cannons team in 2022. So coming across from Avondale in the middle of the season.
I think he initially arrived in Victoria. Was it back in 2019 from New Zealand when he joined Avondale?
May have.
From memory. I could be wrong.
Might be 21, but stand corrected if anyone else, has the numbers in front of it. We'll fact check that one for the time being. But if you've missed it, you're just tuning in here on NPL Victoria YouTube. It's great to be back on YouTube as well. South Melbourne taking the lead through Harrison Sawyer inside the opening 5 minutes. Carrigan. Knights just looking to work their way through this very organised block here from South Melbourne. Another one of departures, or 2 departures in Melbourne Knights defence this season. Both Ben Collins heading off to Heidelberg and losing James Phelps as well. Carrigan certainly one of those defensive replacements to try and fill the gap. The other, Tom Werndl, on the bench today for Melbourne Knights, coming across from Altona Magic. So on the bench today for Knights, Felipe Sanchez, Jack Morton, John Mabok, Jacob Wiseman, and Saif Adin Saki, the brother of former Melbourne City midfielder Hamza. Looking forward to seeing what Saif can do once he gets his opportunity. Did score in a pre-season friendly not too long ago as well, so he's certainly hit the ground running.
And he, of course, replaces Guevara Nepomuceno, who the Curacao international, who was at Knights last year. Will be definitely one to watch, and I think that's the thing with Knights and the league in general. You got to get your visas right. If you get your visas right, you know you've only got 2 of them, but if they can give you that added bit of quality in addition to what you've got with the rest of the squad, it can take you a long way.
He's one of the departures at Melbourne Knights as well, with Luka Kolic as well, joining Melbourne Victory's academy. Travis Semikula as well departing. Just some of the names. But mostly, the core of this Melbourne Knights team has stuck around for another year, which is good news for Ben Suri, working with most of the same players from last season, just a sprinkling in of some very good talent to complement that squad that made it back to the finals for the first time in 8 years and all the way through to the semis of the Australia Cup.
If you are Melbourne Knights, one of the key re-signings was one of their best players last season, Gian Albano.
Well, here he is. Great ball from Semi. Albano looking for Bramwell, and it's Lampard who clears it away. Just rolled past the former Perth Glory striker, but it will be coming back. Saul looking to feed it through, but Ross Archibald puts his boot through it and clears that one away. Seems like in these last 5 minutes or so, Melbourne Knights starting to get a foothold in this contest. A good response after going behind.
Yeah, in midfield, one of the players I previously mentioned, Steve White, is probably one of the best in the competition. He definitely gives them a lot of quality and a lot of progressive possession.
Ball fed through. Albano looking to whip it in. It's clawed away by Lopez. But it looks like there was a foul. Whistle called there from Astro Sakalis. A yellow card given. It's to Ross Archibald. Yellow card there. Maybe for. Was that to Mitch Orr?
Yellow card to Ross Archibald. Sarcasm, Nick. Come on. I think Ross will appreciate that he's probably one of the players who ends up in the referee's notebook more than your average footballer. I think there was an instance last season to open the campaign in the first couple of months of the season where he might have gotten sent off twice. But as we noted, he's definitely one of the most accomplished defenders, who's also capable of playing in that number 6 role as he is tonight.
Is he kind of the Liram El-Mazi replacement in terms of that versatility to be able to play not only as a 6 but also playing as part of a back 5 if Esteban Quintas wants to play a little bit more defensively?
I think so, and if you ask, some South fans, they'll probably say he's a Liram El-Mazi upgrade. And speaking of El-Mazi, wish him all the best.
Payne Andrews' cross all the way back through to Lampard, back into the area and cleared away by Franjic. Barcia nods it back towards the South Melbourne box. More pinballs around. Strong challenge there on Hoare. And it was Ross Archibald with a strong challenge there.
The reason why I say wish Liram El-Mazi all the best, my understanding is he's been ruled out for the season after suffering season-ending knee injury in a pre-season friendly for Dandenong Thunder. Always hate to see a player miss an extended spell on the sidelines through injury, particularly when it happens before the season even commences.
Yep, we wish Liram all the best, and of course his Dandenong Thunder teammates kick off their season on Saturday night against Hume City. New era for them under Adam Piddick.
Were you surprised that Tommy Semi ended up at Summer Street, Nick, after the season he had at Altona, beg your pardon, where I guess the expectation would have been that Altona would have done everything they could have to have kept him. However, there was considerable turnover there, especially with the coaching change, and Melbourne Knights were the beneficiaries. I understand his former club, Dandenong City, was also very close to acquiring him, but Knights ultimately won out.
Well, he's a very, very good option. I mean, this is the last season and a half, probably since that loan spell to Dandy City, and then coming back to Altona last season, he's been in ripping form. So it's a very good pickup for Melbourne Knights. That I think the one area is they probably would want some more firepower in attack this season, Tamir. I think that's fair to say. You know, they had a few players reach around double digits last season, but Semi is certainly a player who's capable of the spectacular. He's capable of scoring as well in large amounts. So fascinating to see how it plays out. Obviously, he's playing a little bit more as a winger this season, sort of complementing Bramwell. And that's a great touch from Semi, but gives away the foul there on Jordan Lampard. And that's what he can do, Tommy Semi. He's got a bit of that X factor. It was such a good touch around Lampard, but unfortunately for him, he caught Lampard and fouled him in the process. Tommy Semi, a PNG international as well.
From memory, I believe he scored 9 league goals for Altona Magic last season.
It's a great compliment as part of that very dynamic attack alongside Jonas Markovski and Sian Cuba. Sawyer putting Carrigan under some pressure. Sewell getting across to help out, but here's Noel Bernarda. Cuts it back. Mikola! Blocked by Carrigan. Game starting to open up a little bit, and Archibald gets across, does well, feeds it back to Max Mikola. Whips it in, looking for Sawyer. Carrigan nods at Glear. Semi playing it back to White. He's forced to recycle possession to Joseph Franjic, who knocks up the line towards Hoare. And Jankovic is there to play it all the way back to Javi Lopez. And here's Jake Marshall, the gold medal winner last year, Tamir. I think that, similarly to the Golden Boot, you know, I think when most people put their predictions in at the start of the season, I don't think Jake Marshall was the first choice, but a very good season last year.
It's been impressive for South Melbourne across a number of seasons. In fact, with the departures of Brad Norton, Marcus Schroen in the off-season, I think Jake Marshall is now South Melbourne's longest-serving player. I believe he's been at the club since 2017. If not 2017, then definitely 2018. Queenslander, like a number of his teammates at South Melbourne, including Max Mikola, who had that opportunity moments ago. Initially thought he took a bit of a heavy touch, but he actually did well to position himself and get a good shot at goal, but it just wasn't to be. And Mikola will once again be hoping to get double figures. I guess the likes of him and Riak were the main source of goals for South Melbourne last season, but you also got plenty from Langway in midfield, who's also departed the club.
Here's Albano. And through the back of him there was a turnover here. Here's Mikola. Plays it short to Lampard. Going to play it back for Mikola, but set him a task, and it's well defended by Hoare, and he wins the free kick. As well on the bench today for South Melbourne, Lucas Inglese, Andy Brennan, Josh Wallen, Emil Payos, backup goalkeeper William Lejeune, and George Tsitsiranis. 2 players coming through the academy in Tsitsiranis and Inglese, making up the bench today for South Melbourne. Ball's put out there for a corner. Albano doing well down that left-hand side to win it. One of those players to watch out for on the bench is Emil Payos. Spent some time both Melbourne City and Melbourne Victory in their academy team. Played primarily for City last season in VPL 1, but looking forward to seeing what he can do tonight should he get the opportunity. Corner coming up here for the visitors. Ball floated in towards the back stick, and Jankovic is there, gets ahead to it, and goes out now for another corner here on the opposite side.
That corner actually prompted the Knights supporters to get vocal. It's good to see a good contingent of active support for both teams tonight. Season opener, plenty of anticipation, a lot of history between these two teams, and I guess at the moment it's South Melbourne supporters that would be happier with the way proceedings have gone, but here's a chance for Knights to level it up.
So Steve White was looking for the short corner, but opted against it. And looks like Astro Sakalis is going to have a word to Corey Sewell. Morgan Evans as well.
Evans has done well to establish himself as a regular starter for South Melbourne. I believe he's a player who was promoted from their under-23s a few seasons back.
Here is White. Set into the area. It's not a clear. Barcia. Mikola looking to break. Doesn't really have the support alongside him. Sorry, that was Payne Andrews looking to get forward and was looking for Mikola on this near side, but in the end it just peters out for a throw-in.
Now, Nick, I know you did a lengthy season preview with the NPL Victoria pod. Just wanted to ask you, in terms of expectations for both teams, so we'll stay with play for a second here.
Archibald, Sawyer, Barcia. Feeds it out there to Bernarda. Looking back for Mario Barcia. He's in shooting range. Is blocked. Barcia gets back across and feeds it out to Lampard. Sawyer, back to Lampard. Great 1-2. Lampard looking to get him behind, but it's well defended by White. Semi just couldn't keep it alive, and the ball goes out for a throw.
My question to you was going to be, it's widely accepted that South Melbourne's goal or ceiling for this season will be a championship after a couple of heartbreaking grand finals in the previous 2 seasons. What is the ceiling for Melbourne Knights? We might get you to answer that question once this Mikola throw-in is taken.
Well, here is Max Mikola with the throw. He's already caused headaches with these long throws. It led to the opener from Harry Sawyer. Launches it into the area. Getting ahead to it was a Knights defender, and the ball's out for a corner. I'll come back to the Melbourne Knights prediction in... Actually, no, I'll get to it now. I think that they'd be looking to go a bit better than last season. Obviously, getting back to the finals last year, I think, was the goal, and they had a very successful season both in the league and in the cup. So I think for them, it'd be looking to try and get some silverware this season, to me, whether it's the winning a premiership, winning a championship, winning a Doherty Cup, but certainly staying in the conversation and staying right up and maybe bridging that gap a little bit with the likes of Avondale and South as Mikola's corner is whipped in. Jankovic, Barcia just sized it up, but really couldn't get clean purchase on it. It's cleared away. We know Mario Barcia is capable of a long-range goal. Scored a couple last season for Bentley Greens as well. Long ball for Sawyer, chests it down. Met there by Joseph Franjic. Mikola nods it back towards Sawyer, skips around, and Ivan Franjic gets across and clears it away. Evans going to feed it through, and Paul just plays it out for a throw.
I think for the Melbourne Knights, as much as the most loyal of their supporters would want the team aiming for a championship, I think a more realistic goal is to back up the finals appearance from last year with another finals appearance and potentially go deep in the cup again, get to that national stage. So we have another Mikola long throw. It's really become part and parcel of the South Melbourne at Lakeside under Esteban Quintas experience, hasn't it?
Well, Mikola is sizing up this run-up from behind the advertising boards, and he launches that into the area. It's not a clear. Barcia helps it back in. Archibald swings a foot at it, and the flag is up for offside. Again, causing problems is Max Mikola from the long throws.
He's quite a handy player when he's got the ball on the ground as well, and quite skillful. And he's another one of those players that at this level is one of the best in his position, but for whatever reason hasn't been able to elevate himself into the professional sphere.
Ball goes out there for a corner. And you do mention it, Tamir. I mean, South Melbourne has been a bit of a pipeline as of late. We've seen with Henry Hoare, who made the move from Queensland to South Melbourne and now playing for Brisbane Roar, has become a key part of that team over the last few seasons.
Brothers playing on the park tonight for Melbourne Knights.
Unfortunately, we didn't see the two brothers go head-to-head in the Australia Cup semi-final because Henry was suspended. Too many yellow cards in the lead-up to that semi-final, which Brisbane Roar did win 1-0 thanks to a goal from Thomas Waddingham. Mikola whips it into the area, looking for Sawyer, gets his head to it. Ball just bounces around for a second, and Sawyer was waiting for the follow-up, and it's cleared away for another throw-in, but as we know with South Melbourne, danger's not averted in these sort of areas when the ball goes out for a throw. Max Mikola standing over this, or making his way over to take this throw in on the near side. Played just about 37 minutes here. Mikola launches it in. Sawyer waiting for it, nodded towards goal. Bit of a mix-up there at the back, but Chris Oldfield keeps it alive.
One of the hallmarks of that Melbourne Knights team from last season is they were defensively quite solid through much of the league campaign. Of course, we did see 2 of these fixtures last season, as we'll stick will play with Albano on the ball.
Albano here on this left-hand side. Just couldn't bring it under control. Ball goes out for a goal kick, and the Clarendon corner lets him know about it.
Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but South Melbourne won both fixtures 2-1 last year.
That is correct. Won both games 2-1. And the last time that Melbourne Knights did win was a 2-1 win back in 2022 at Knight Stadium, where Gianni Albano did score that game. Pretty sure he scored the winner in that game as well, if memory serves me correct.
I think so. And the year before, they beat South Melbourne a few days after being eliminated by them in the Australia Cup from memory, thanks to a goal from Dorjock.
Ivan Franjic does well to intercept that ball from Mikola. And Semi has some space in this right-hand side to get forward. Just assessing his options for a sec, and recycles possession there to White. Semi lets it run, but Franjic just wasn't on the same wavelength as the ball goes out there for a throw-in.
And one of the players that Melbourne Knights would love to have available tonight, whether it's as a starter or off the bench, is Mohamed Sumeoro, who I believe he's, into his 4th season at the club. I think he might have been a signing back ahead of the 2021 season. Arguably his most productive season to date last year. I think he scored 8 league goals and also scored a couple of times in the national stages of the Cup. Fortunately, he had a lengthy injury towards the end of that cup run that I think has potentially affected his availability for this round 1 clash.
He did suffer that injury. I think it might have been against Heidelberg in the quarterfinals. Just have to fact check that one, but he did.
I believe you're right.
Yeah, did suffer that injury, but did score in both their round of 32 and round of 16 wins. So he had a good run in him, a very good season. 7 league goals. Few goals as well in the cup as Semi looking to get forward. Jankovic meeting him immediately and forcing him to recycle possession.
Good to see you correct me with the correct amount of goals.
I never thought I'd see the day. Anthony Giselle feeds it to Sewell, but the option's just not there for him. Anthony Giselle, been at Melbourne Knights now for quite some time, Demir. I mean, he's one of their longest-serving players. Might actually be their longest-serving, I think, in this current squad. Correct me if I'm wrong with that, but I think he'd certainly be up there.
I believe that is the case. I mean, Anthony Giselle has been at the Melbourne Knights since 2017. Prior to that, he had a short spell at Pascoval, as well as a few seasons in the Melbourne Victory Academy. But he did make his senior debut for Melbourne Knights as a 17-year-old back in 2013. Might have been a 16-year-old, actually.
In the VPL era.
Yeah, and that was a very good season for Melbourne Knights. I think they finished 2nd on the ladder and were eliminated from memory by South Melbourne in the finals.
It's a great ball over the top. Semi brings it under control. Can he get the shot away? But getting across is Marshall. Did very well to intercept Semi at the last second. Bernarda. Archibald, they do well to work their way through the initial stages of that press. And now Barcia turns. He has a lot of space in front of him. Feeds it short to Archibald. Bernarda. What have you made of the first 40 minutes of Noel Bernarda's debut for South Melbourne, Demir. I mean, you mentioned prior to that Green Gully move, he was in some ripping form. He had trials at both the Mariners and the Jets, but what have you made from the early stages of his debut here at Lakeside?
I think he's definitely a player to get South Melbourne fans excited. You know, sometimes their football isn't the prettiest to watch, a lot of long ball and Route 1 football, but when you put the ball into the feet of Noel Bernarda, he's definitely one of the most creative players in the league, and he's had flashes of brilliance in this first half, and I'm sure once he gets the first goal to his name, he'll be expected to, you know, given his quality, I think he's definitely a player that should be aiming to hit double figures for the season. Irrespective of, you know, how many goals Sawyer scores, Bernarda's got the quality to be one of the best attacking players in the competition, and you'd imagine he'd get a lot of opportunities with this front line of Sawyer and Mikola.
Ball fed over the top looking for Albano. So it was Corey Sewell getting forward, and they do win the corner on that far side. So just coming in towards half-time, close to 43 minutes played here in the 2024 NPL Victoria season opener. South Melbourne leading 1-0 thanks to Harrison Sawyer. The Knights looking to pull one back before the break. White floats it in. Lopez gets a fist to it. Was under some pressure there. Well, it was played down from Sewell, but it's going to be coming back. Great switch there from Giselle. Albano brings it down, gets around his man. Well played from Albano. Crosses towards the back stick. Well, fed back to Sewell on the opposite side, and in the end, him and Ivan Franjic weren't on the same page, and that ball goes out for a goal kick. Very rare you see the two fullbacks from the same team on the same side, but Corey Sewell staying up from that initial corner.
That was one of the factors which made Melbourne Knights so effective throughout the course of the 2023 NPL season, was they probably had two of the best fullbacks in their position when Corey Sewell was fit, that once they did lose him, and, you know, no disrespect to Jack Morton, but, you know, they lost a lot when Sewell was out injured, and credit to him. I still think that they had a great season, particularly going so far in the Australia Cup, despite some of the injuries that affected the team late on. And that's the interesting thing. With the likes of Phelps and Corlidge gone, what is their ceiling this year? And how effective can they be up front with, you know, a player like Tommy Semi, as he appeals for a free kick there. I did think it was a free kick.
Yeah, Ross Archibald letting him know about it.
But referee Astro Sakalis was closer to the ball, and he was quite confident in pointing to the ball, indicating that the South Melbourne player in question got the ball first.
So 1 minute of stoppage time here on Adam Bavkar, the fourth official for tonight's board on that far side. See if Melbourne Knights can maybe fashion one last chance before the break. South Melbourne look quite comfortable sitting back in their block to see out this first half, and looking to just hold on to that lead. Semi, he whips it in, eludes Bramwell, and it's knotted clear, not entirely. Albano feeds it back into the area, but straight into the arms of Javi Lopez, who, since arriving in Victoria, Demir, he has been the best goalkeeper, I think it goes to show. I mean, with all the awards and all the accolades he's had on gold medal night, he's been such a key. Talk about, you know, not only just the setup of South Melbourne as a unit, but Javi Lopez between the sticks has been key to this success. At Hellas, as Oldfield met there by Noel Bernarda, and Astro Sakalis gives him a yellow card for his troubles. Oldfield still down after that one.
I think that's fair. Bernarda's entitled to go for the ball, and I don't think that it was malicious. I think it was just one of those ones where Oldfield gets there first. Whether Bernarda could have pulled out or not is, you know, a point in contention, but I think a yellow card is fair given the extent of that challenge.
So you think only a matter of seconds before this first half comes to an end as Chris Oldfield, all good to go and all good to continue. As beautiful night here in Albert Park for this NPL Victoria season opener as Oldfield just sends it long, and that's the end of the first half here at Lakeside Stadium. South Melbourne in the lead, 1-0, thanks to none other than Harrison Sawyer, the returning star striker for Hellas, opening the scoring inside the opening 5 minutes. Of course, the new captain of the club as well, and a great start for him. Melbourne Knights did have some chances back the other way, started to get a bit of an ascendancy, but South Melbourne, as per, causing all sorts of issues from the long throws and the set pieces. But to me, of course, before we go to a break, any final thoughts on that first half?
I think new season, same old South Melbourne. Goal that we've seen plenty of times over the last couple of seasons during the Quintas reign, and a game plan that was very reminiscent to what we have seen of Hellas in recent seasons, where they get the early goal and, you know, they don't push themselves as much. They're, you know, not as forceful as they were in attack in the minutes leading up to it. And I think if you're Melbourne Knights, you've got to take advantage of that.
Well, we'll be back in around 15 minutes' time here at Lakeside Stadium. The score is South Melbourne 1, Melbourne Knights 0. Welcome back to Lakeside Stadium here for the 2024 NPL Victoria season opener between South Melbourne and Melbourne Knights. It is South Melbourne leading 1-0 thanks to Harrison Sawyer. First goal back for the club since returning from his overseas ventures in both India and Finland. And what a way to kick off the new year for him. But he and his teammates have still got 45 minutes of work to do if they want to come away with the 3 points to kick off the new year. Melbourne Knights, on the other hand, looking to turn things around in this second half as we're just about ready to go. And Melbourne Knights kicking from right to left in their away grey strip, and South Melbourne in their home blue strip kicking from left to right. Nick Tabano here with Damir Kulash to take you through the second half here. It's great to have your company on NPL Victoria YouTube for this huge season opener, original derby. Damir, what do Melbourne Knights, start with them first, what do they have to do to find their way back into this contest? What did you sort of gain from that first half? Do you feel like what you saw was good enough? Do you feel like they need to add a little bit more? Like, what was sort of, I guess, your analysis from that first 45, and what do they need to do in the second half to get something from this game?
Definitely think that they need to do a bit more, particularly going forward. They remain scoreless. You know, I think they need to attack for the flanks, and particularly the one player that I'd be looking in terms of the individual matchup to be effective for Knights is Gian Albano up against Morgan Evans. He's a player that's hurt South Melbourne before. There's no reason he couldn't hurt him again. And, you know, Semi, we've seen what his pace can do in the opening minutes of this game. He's definitely a player, in addition to Albano, that the Knights midfield and fullbacks need to do, I think, a better job in this half of getting the ball to, particularly in transition, because they can really hurt South Melbourne there. But it's also harder when South Melbourne are the team who soaks up so much of the pressure and looks to attack you in transition with this 1-goal lead.
Here's Jankovic, who put the cross into the area, but it was deflected out for a corner. So another opportunity here for South Melbourne to start this second half.
There were appeals from several South Melbourne players about a handball by an unidentified Knights defender. I must admit I didn't catch who it was. But I have to say, even if it was a handball, I thought it was quite inadvertent.
And quite unlucky to award a penalty for that one for a free kick. Should there have been a decision made as Mikola whips it in. Oldfield comes out to collect. And a good save there from the veteran goalkeeper, who's pulled up a little bit lame. Bit of a collision in midair there amongst a sea of players in both South Melbourne blue and Melbourne Knights grey. He's all good to continue. Chris Oldfield been in the walls a little bit to start this game. Ivan Franjic looking for Semi.
Now, I'd imagine Chris Oldfield is a player who, throughout the course of his career, hasn't had too many happy visits to Lakeside Stadium, given that South Melbourne have been relatively strong during his time in Victorian football and have made Lakeside Stadium quite a fortress.
Well, been there through the rise. Well, not really the rise, the where they were, the fall, now the rise, as Mikola's missile of a long throw just finds its way through to the near post, and in the end it actually works out quite well because he's got to throw him from a much better spot in a much more dangerous area.
I must admit, effectiveness aside, and not, you know, criticising its effectiveness, but I'm not a fan of this type of football.
Well, it's not going to stop Max Mikola from doing what's coming next to me.
It's not, and if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Launches it into the area. Oldfield gets a fist to it. It falls to Peter Andrews. Just puts it wide. Jack Painter Andrews was in a good spot there at the back post. Would have had to do a little bit of work to get through the sea of bodies, but in the end it just goes out for a goal kick as Knights looking to play their way out from the back through Anthony Drizel and now feeds Steve White. They've got some space and they can go through Ivan Franjic.
Nick, may I ask a hypothetical?
Yeah, sure.
How do you think one of South Melbourne's favourite sons Ange Postecoglou. What do you think he would think about this type of football that we've seen on display by Esteban Quintas' coach side in the past couple of seasons?
I don't want to put words in Ange's mouth. Sorry, Demir.
No, all good.
That's not my question to answer. It's a very press conference sort of response there, Demir, but I'm not answering that. Sewell. Looking to feed through Hoare. Albano. Barcia gets across, and Giselle and Hoare trying to work together to try and work that play out, but doesn't work out in the end as Painter Andrews looking to go for a long throw variant of his own, and now Noel Bernarda's in behind. Bernarda looking to break through on goal. Oldfield comes out and collects the ball. And well, usually it's Mikola with the long throws, but Painter Andrews, he sensed the weakness. He backed in Bernarda's speed, and almost a second there for South.
I thought Bernarda's last touch was too heavy, and that allowed Oldfield, who did well himself, to spring into action and time his movement towards the ball so effectively that he didn't end up causing any issues.
Albano looking to find Kieran Bramwell, who's been a bit quiet so far, and his pass eludes Mitch Hoare. Haven't seen a lot of Kieran Bramwell so far. His second season at Melbourne Knights. He scored 8 goals in the league last season in his first year at Knights, coming across from Perth Glory. White looking to play it through, but Marko Jankovic is there, and he's happy just to feed it back to Javi Lopez, who sends it up high. Sawyer, foul given away there, and a yellow card. It's Anthony Giselle, who went through the back there of Harry Sawyer, and Astro Sakalis reaching for the yellow ticket.
Quick one, Nick. At the end of last season, Kieran Bramwell started the majority of the games for Melbourne Knights. I think he missed all but a handful of games where he didn't start, that is. Do you think his production of 8 goals, do you think he would have been happy with that? Or do you think, given the season was, the chances that he potentially had, getting double digits would have been a more realistic target? And is that going to be a sufficient target for him this season?
Just come back to that in just a moment as Painter Andrews is fed in behind. Whips it in. Franjic is there to clear. And now Knights looking to break back the other way. Albano skips around. Well played there from Albano to get around Evans. He's got Mitch Hoare in support and he waits. And instead, probably waited a second too long. Actually, it might work out here as White finds Giselle, and he's got Ivan Franjic in a lot of space here. Feeds it back. Giselle. Here is White. Well played there from Jankovic, and now South Melbourne looking to break back the other way. Painter Andrews. Been busy early. 1-2 with Bernarda. Painter Andrews looking to whip it in. Cross takes the deflection, and Chris Oldfield is there to collect. Bit of end-to-end stuff at the moment. So I'll get to that Kieran Bramwell question in just a moment, as Anthony Giselle looking to feed through the aforementioned striker. But Evans was there, and Barcia looking to play it back. But no, I do think that double digits certainly would have been the aim. He had the chances last year. It's not as if the chances weren't coming. I think he's certainly got it within his wheelhouse to have a big season. He's got a lot of talent. He's a player that I remember watching him when he was at Perth Glory. He scored a goal against Melbourne Victory here at Amy Park a couple of years ago.
3-1 win.
Yep. Great ball from Archibald, and here is Mikola. It's shot on goal in the end there. Sorry, it was Jordan Lampard who got the shot away, and it's deflected out for a corner. And we know Jordan Lampard can get forward and score. He was doing it with Moreland City all those years ago, and last season and the last few seasons at Green Gully. He most famously scored against Moreland City at CB Smith Reserve with basically the last kick of the game to rescue a point in that game for Green Gully in their push for finals. Of course, they fell just short behind Altona Magic. Nicola's ball is whipped in, looking for Jankovic, and it's a foul amongst the sea of bodies, and it's going in Melbourne Knights' favour. But to go back to it, I think Bramwell certainly has it within him to reach double digits this season. And I think he would certainly have that as sort of the target to beat that 8-goal mark in the league this season and add some goals as well in the Doherty Cup. And if they get to the Australia Cup as well, certainly have that as a little bit of a target too. They have, of course, lost Luka Kolic and, as you mentioned, Javaro Nepomuceno. So with himself and Tommy Semi up front, that's a bit of a hole to fill, and along with John Albano as well. That's where the goals you'd think will be coming from this season.
As well as the Swedish striker Lars Kanander.
Yes, signing for Bentley Greens this season. Was leading the then NPL2, now VPL1, Golden Boot standings with his early form at Werribee City before he was signed mid-year at Melbourne Knights. Did score against Heidelberg in the Australia Cup. Well played by Mikola. Archibald and Jankovic just hoofs it clear. And Joseph Franjic is there to get across and reset things once more. White looking to feed through Bramwell. Does well, Kieran Bramwell, but Marshall's there to meet him, and Jake Marshall puts the ball out there for a throw-in.
They're the type of contributions that went a long way to seeing Jake Marshall win last year's NPL gold medalist. I know it's an award voted by referees, but he was definitely a deserved winner, one of the best defenders in the league, and part of that really solid partnership at the back that he's got with Marko Jankovic, a fellow Queenslander.
Bramwell, under pressure there from Mikola. Feeds it out for Lampard. 1-on-1 with Semi. A foot race on that far side, but Lampard does win on that occasion. It's been a good battle on that far side between the two new signings. Jordan Lampard filling the vacant hole left by Brad Norton, who filled that left-back position for so long. And of course, on this near side, it's Jack Payne-Andrews, who has played as a wing-back before, but filling in the gap left by Ben Jeeba, who has departed the club as well.
One of the hallmarks of calling games here at Lakeside Stadium, no matter what time of the year it is, Nick, even if it's early February, as it is now, is how much colder it gets in the second half.
Yeah. And every year I'm none the wiser.
Hey, come on. You spend enough nights, Monday nights, at a cold, chilly van.
Semi! And it's cleared. Lopez got a foot to it, or got a hand to it, and it's cleared away there by Payne-Andrews. Tommy Semi showing what he can do when he can use his speed and get to the byline. Javi Lopez was there, though. But Melbourne Knights starting to ask the question of this South Melbourne defence.
Definitely a well-done Tommy moment there from Semi.
Albano. He got the shot away. The ball goes out there for a corner.
Ross Archibald has to remind his teammates to wake up, to not let their concentration slip, because the Knights have definitely turned it up a notch in the past 30 seconds or so.
All started through that Tommy Semi attack, and they've got a corner here. Players crowding around Javi Lopez's goal, and that's whipped in, and it's off the crossbar. But according to Astro Sakalis, Anthony Giselle's corner took a deflection, and it's out for a corner now on the opposite side, which Steve White will take now on the natural left foot. But Anthony Giselle trying his luck, almost an Olympico there. White whips it in again, aims towards Lopez's goal, but Sawyer was there, but it will come back. Still a chance here, but the flag is up on the opposite side for a foul. And the Melbourne Knights fans in that corner are not happy. A yellow card awarded amongst the sea of bodies there, Demir. It is getting a little bit spicy. And you can see Astro Sakalis going over and clearing out the pack.
Yeah, to be honest, it's really hard to tell what happened there. You did see a South Melbourne player, the one on the ground, pull up as if he had been fouled. I guess to add further antagonism to the situation, it happened directly in front of the Melbourne Knights supporters who weren't too happy with that decision.
So it did look like, I think it was Mitch Hall who had possession, who went to ground. But then there must have been something amongst that sort of sea of players. Maybe there was, I'm not exactly sure in that moment.
Is that Mikola who's down?
I believe it might be. So still conversations going on that far side. Astro Sakalis going over, the South physio on the field as well. We've just played over an hour. The score, South Melbourne 1, Melbourne Knights 0, but the last few minutes in this breather amongst the sea of chaos is probably not a bad thing for South Melbourne because they were under some pressure from the Melbourne Knights attack. So they just get a moment to reset and get back into their structures as we're just about set to restart play again. Javi Lopez, let's get things underway. Neither coaches going to their benches just yet. Does look like those South Melbourne will be the first ones to make a sub as player lumbering over. Been told to head back towards the South bench from warming up. Joseph Franjić's header. Well, you could see he put his arms up in frustration because the ball went out for a throw in a very dangerous area. And Demir, I know you're not a fan of it, but the South players are.
Look, if you're a South Melbourne fan, you're not going to be complaining, given how effective it is.
Here is Max Mikola, lining up for the long throw. Tall timber up from the back. Launches it into the area. Sewell gets ahead to a Painter Andrews fires, but straight up into the sky and out for a goal kick.
Do you reckon that might have been considered a goal in the early 80s at this ground?
I think that would have gone out in the full, Demir. I think that the goals would have been a little bit more central. And it's turned over. Here's a chance for Painter Andrews. Instead of going for goal, went for the cross and probably just had to be a little bit selfish there.
You can definitely see the idea of what he was trying to do, but he misread the situation and definitely should have had a strike on goal himself. I believe Oldfield's near post was exposed.
So South are about to make a substitution, but not until after this long throw, which will be a Jack Painter Andrews long throw. We saw before it worked in terms of playing through Noel Bernarda, but we'll see what he can do with launching it in Max Mikola style. Right into the area from Painter Andrews. Ball, pinballs around. It's cleared away. Helped on its way by Lampard. Sewell. Archibald not with the best of touches. Semi just bustles his way through. He goes to ground. Calls from the Melbourne Knights fans and bench for a foul. Go unrewarded there from Astro Sakalis. And we will get that substitution now for South Melbourne. And it looks like it's Andy Brennan coming on.
Since returning to the club at the start of the 2022 NPL season, Brennan has been primarily used as an impact man off the bench.
Number 24, Noel Bernarda, being replaced by number 7, Andy Brennan.
And I think it's smart with Bernarda on that yellow to not risk him, particularly in a game like this, which, you know, over the past 5-10 minutes has had a couple of flashpoints.
As you said, Andy Brennan, 2 seasons since his return. Hasn't had the greatest of output when it comes to goals, but his pressure and the way he just constantly harasses defenders has certainly been a big plus for South Melbourne over the last 2 years. He's an energizer bunny in that attack. And we'll see how him and Harry Sawyer go, reunited again at the pointy end of the South Melbourne attack. Noel Bernarda's debut, or league debut for South, comes to an end after just over 60 minutes. Here's Tommy Semi. Well played there from Semi to ride a few challenges and feed it back. Oldfield under some pressure from Mikola, and he just has to go long first time. Jankovic, Archibald. Carrigan helps it forward. Bit of head tennis there between the two teams as Barcia. Nice little flick over the top there from Brennan. Hoare. Going to drive forward. And he's set a task there for Bramwell, but it's won't work out there for John Albano, and it's out for a South Melbourne throw-in. Of course, Ben Suri hasn't turned to his bench just yet, but he does have options in Felipe Sanchez and John Mabok, who are the more attacking options, as well as Saif Edin Saki, who is an attacking midfielder. So a lot of players who can play in around sort of Kieran Bramwell up top. But it'll be fascinating to see which of those attacking players he does turn to first.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing Saki in person and what type of impact he can make off the bench. Suppose when you look at Mabok, he's one player who definitely impressed in the 23s or 21s as it was known back then for Melbourne Knights last season. And Felipe Sanchez is a player who made his senior debut back in 2019, but hasn't quite established himself yet as a starter for this Melbourne Knights team. Maybe this is going to be his year.
It's a strong sort of hip and shoulder there from Harry Sawyer, and a big challenge there from Barcia on Steve White, and he's going to go into the referee's notebook. A yellow card there for the Argentinian. Just on John Mabok, 12 goals in the under-23s last season. And of course, he was one of the stars of AFCON Victoria playing for Ethiopia. So a player to certainly watch. He made a couple senior appearances, a few appearances on the bench last year, but looking forward to seeing him hopefully more in the senior setup this year at Summer Street.
And if you are a young player like Mabok, you definitely need to take the opportunities that are given to you. So on a night like this, you come on, potentially your team's 1-0 down in search of a goal. If you can get that goal, you can, basically establish yourself in this, match day squad for a number of months ahead. And you've got to take those opportunities when a player like Sumayoro is still out injured.
The other one you mentioned to me, Felipe Sanchez, who returned to the club, played for the club last season, came in from Pascoe Vale, was a big part of their promotion push in their NPL2 season, as it was then known in 2022, was a key part of that attack with the likes of Terence Carter and Ricky Foster-Hoswise. Tommy Semi goes to ground and, again, doesn't win the free kick.
I would assume the referee hasn't seen that because...
And again, the Melbourne Knights fans, Demir, not happy, and Tommy Semi going to ground as Astros Sakalis calls for the physio.
It did appear that Lampard, unintentionally, did strike. Well, when I say strike, it's...
Caught him late.
Yeah.
Challenge, yes.
Not that... Well, he was going for the ball, but he did make contact with Semi. Hence why Semi's gone down. Hopefully he's not bleeding or anything like that, but... On first inspection, it did appear to be a foul. And if referee Astros Sakalis missed it, you would think that unless the assistant was blindsided, that it would have been caught. But wasn't to be. And again, it happened on that side near the Knight fans, which probably made it a bit more vocal as we see another South Melbourne change.
So Josh Wallen coming on here for South Melbourne, and it will be the end of the evening for another debutant in Ross Archibald. A very, very good debut, I think, from Ross Archibald. Steadying sort of presence in the middle of the park. And he's replaced by Josh Wallen, who initially was released by the club, but then was signed late in the window, returning to the club, of a player who's been there for quite some time. If you don't really count him being released and then coming back, technically, it just continues on this stint.
And wasn't the only player in the South Melbourne squad who we assumed had left the club in the off-season, only to return in the final few weeks of the transfer window.
Yeah, William Lejeune, the backup goalkeeper as well. I believe he'd signed for Manningham, but now he's back at the club and on the bench today. Manningham, one of the newly promoted sides, along with Dandenong City, into NPL Victoria. Manningham, their first season in Victoria's top flight.
Speaking of Manningham, one of their players, Seb Hernado, was also announced by South Melbourne.
Not in the squad today.
And our understanding is that he's signed elsewhere in the NPL.
Albano. Evans. Here's Harry Sawyer. A tangle there with Mitchell, and Mitchell does very well to work his way through that and sets a task for Bramwell, but Jake Marshall's there to put it out for a throw-in.
He'd probably be close to man of the match, Jake Marshall. I don't think he's put a foot wrong. Gotta say, first game of the season, you don't get too many standout fixtures like South Melbourne, Melbourne Knights. So well done to the NPL Victoria team over at FV for this fixture. No, last year you got South Melbourne, Moreland City. I know the draw is quite random, but most would have been eagerly anticipating round one when they saw this fixture come up as the season opener.
Well, of course, you mentioned Manningham before, Demir. South Melbourne do play Manningham in a few weeks' time at Petty's Reserve. And you mentioned Moreland City. That's South Melbourne's next opponent at CB Smith Reserve next weekend. Moreland City surviving last year just ahead of Bentley Greens and North Geelong Warriors, making a second straight season the top flight. Semi playing it short to Steve White and looking to feed Albano. He'll come back. Anthony Giselle assessing his options. Sewell whips it in, takes a deflection, and Javi Lopez collects.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Moreland City is the only team in the top two flights of Victorian football who plays out of CB Smith Reserve.
I believe so. Well, because Pascoe Vale and Brunswick Juventus were both relegated, and Brunswick City are back at Dunstan Reserve.
Who would have thought, hey?
Yeah. I mean, 2 years ago, they were both battling. They were close to being back up here.
And, you know, before that, Pascoe Vale were a staple of the top flight.
Finals team not long ago as well. Ball fed through. Bramwell looking to get there, but Lopez comes out and clears it out for a throw-in.
Now, Lopez, I don't want to be, you know, stereotypical, but, you know, for a keeper of his side, his background, it does remind me a lot of Ike Casillas.
That's a fair point.
Similar goalkeeping attributes as well. Very good shot stopper, good with his feet in terms of saving and, you know, even playing out from the back.
Well, he's going to have to defend his goal here because it's another corner here for Melbourne Knights. Steve White coming across to take this. Ball is looped in and a player goes to ground. There was a foul inside the penalty area. Although Bramwell did get his head to it and put it over the bar, but there was a foul in the lead-up. And it does look like we will see a substitution here. And it's going to be Felipe Sanchez coming on here for Melbourne Knights at the end of the game here for Mitch Hoare. So Felipe Sanchez, the first player called upon from Ben Suri. Didn't get many opportunities last season, so we'll see what he can do this time around, maybe with an extended opportunity. You spoke about from a buck. This could be big for him as well. Sorry, Mbok.
Yeah, I must admit, I wasn't that clued into NPL 2 in 2022 as you were. But from all accounts, from what you've said, Felipe Sanchez had a very productive season, that campaign under, was it Alex Cobbo as the coach?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, real sliding doors moment in Victorian football for both Pascoe Vale and Brunswick Juventus, as we've noted, two clubs who have been, you know, quite prominent clubs in the Victorian football scene over the last decade. I mean, for Brunswick Juventus, last 4 decades, if you go back to its time in the National Soccer League in the 80s, particularly the mid-80s, where they had one of the best teams in the country. But if you are wondering about them and their fortunes over the course of this season, VPL2 doesn't commence for at least another month, isn't it?
I think start of
Labor
March,
Day
yep.
weekend.
Yep. So both them and Pascoe Vale relegated at the end of last season. Felipe Sanchez, as mentioned, was a big part of that promotion push for Pascoe Vale as part of a very talented attack with, we mentioned Terence Carter, Ricky Foster-Hosway, Terence Carter playing for Brunswick Juventus this season.
Bilal Habib as well.
Bilal Habib, Aidan Mustadanagic, who played more as a fullback, Nick Georgopoulos, a very talented Pascoe Vale team that fell just short under Alex Cobo. Semi brought to ground and he wins the free kick. Wallen giving away that one. See Steve White looking to play quickly, but it didn't go back to the spot.
Well, the ball was rolling,
Yeah.
moving. That's the, I think, infringement, or if you want to call it an infringement there. The reason why the ball has been called back to be taken again.
Ball fed through. Here is Felipe Sanchez. Cuts around. Sanchez gets the shot. But the ball is cleared away and calls for a handball. Comes out there for Giselle, who, bit of a hit and hope. And that goes out for a goal kick. And Felipe Sanchez causing some early problems. Did well to manoeuvre his way around Jake Marshall. But in the end, the shot was blocked.
Yeah, by the time he got that shot away, a bit like Mikler in the first half, just had a number of bodies in front of him who did well to close the angle and to close the space that Sanchez had to aim for. But he's definitely made an impact for Melbourne Knights, and I do wonder how long before we see Saki or Mabok come on as well to provide added support. South Melbourne haven't really provided too much in attack over the last 10-15 minutes.
Well, really, since those Painter-Andrews opportunities, they haven't created a lot. And it really has been all, I wouldn't say completely one-way traffic, but Melbourne Knights have certainly had the momentum. South Melbourne, of course, made 2 substitutions. Still have Emil Payos and Lucas Inglesi, along with George Serranis as well. And William Lejeune, the backup goalkeeper.
Payos is definitely a player I want to get a good look at.
Here's Albano driving forward, looking to go through the middle. Gian Albano feeds it out towards Semi. Semi just fires first time. And the ball goes out for a goal kick. Another warning shot fired there from Melbourne Knights.
It's those 2 players again, Albano and Semi, that have been the Knights' most threatening so far tonight. I think if you're South Melbourne, you just want the comfort of that second goal. But as we were just mentioning, Nick, they haven't looked that interested in extending their advantage the last 10-15 minutes. And you do wonder if that's something that Melbourne Knights can seize upon in these final 15 minutes or so.
Well, you did mention Emil Payos. He may be one of those players called upon to try shore up this result. Lucas Inglesi is a defender, and George Titsinaris as well from the under-23s as well on the bench today. Players who have signed senior contracts this year, so good to see the youth who lost the grand final last year against Port Melbourne as well.
What a match. What a match. 4-3.
One of those players who did play that game for Port Melbourne, Zach Spiteri, is in the squad as well for South Melbourne. Not playing today, but he's in the senior squad. 3-2, I believe it was.
4-3.
4-3.
In extra time, I think a 120th minute winner. I believe the winning goal scorer was Mark Leonard from Port Melbourne Sharks, who won player of the match. And who's now at West United, if memory serves me correct.
Well, another player who did play that game, Boltong, another player as well who is in the senior squad for South Melbourne this year. Not in the matchday squad today as well, along with the likes of Josh Franco and Connor Halfpenny. Yes, you heard that correctly. Josh Franco, no, not the former Port Adelaide midfielder, but former Melbourne Victory youth player as the ball is fed through, and Corey Sewell does well to telegraph that one.
You just had to get that in there about the namesake from that great Port Adelaide team of the mid-2000s, but we have violated the no-sharing rule with...
Already. Twice. You already mentioned that this is the home of the former home of the South Melbourne Swannies.
It's inescapable, Nick, here in Melbourne, isn't it? Apologies to our interstate viewers who...
International as well.
Yeah, but particularly those ones north of the border or north of the Barassi line who are probably thinking, AFL, what's that?
Poor touch there from Semi. Sawyer the goal scorer. Ball ricochets all the way back, and a little bit of a mix-up at the back will work out here for Gian Albano. He cuts inside, and a block there from Evans. Still alive. Going to ground was Ivan Franjic, but Jastro Sakalis again waves play on. Bit of a nervous moment there for the South Melbourne defence. Carrigan getting across to just calm things down again. Steve White lets it run and does well to win the free kick. I'll tell you what, Demir, if there is a player in the votes today for Melbourne Knights, certainly leading the votes, I think that Steve White is making a very good case today. He has been brilliant in the middle of the park.
I think it's the usual Steve White performance. He's definitely a player who has played overseas in the States from memory. He was in the Seattle Sounders, the second team there, where I think he was actually teammates with an ex-South Melbourne player in Jesse Daly.
He also spent time in the Central Coast Mariners youth team set up as well.
Well, that I think was his springboard to the Seattle Sounders second team, where he was coached by former Mariners legend in John Hutchinson.
Mikola finds Brennan, takes a touch. Brennan fires! Over the bar in the end there from Andy Brennan, but still showing, despite their lead, despite not creating too many chances, at South Melbourne, they pose a threat and attack, and Andy Brennan firing his first attempt on goal there.
I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, but if memory serves me correct, Andy Brennan, in his first ever original Melbourne derby against Melbourne Knights back in 2015, scored the winning goal in a 2-1 South Melbourne win.
Something about 2-1s with these two teams when they meet. Here's Ivan Franjic getting forward. Good speed there from Ivan Franjic. He goes to ground, and it actually looks like he's clutching his hamstring, Demir. He's won a free kick.
There may have also been a tug there from Mikola.
Yep.
I don't think that contributed to the injury, but it would be rather concerning for Melbourne Knights if they were to lose Ivan Franjic.
Well, Franjic still on the ground at the moment, and fingers crossed that there isn't an injury and maybe it was just a little bit of cramp or whatever it might have been at this stage of the game, because you can't afford to be losing a player of that quality. It looks like they are going to make a double substitution, though. They do have Tom Werndl and Jack Morton on the bench who can fill in defensively if Ivan Franjic can't continue. But the substitutions will happen before this free kick. Unless it's what the indication is, unless they're going to hold off for a little bit longer, as still setting things up, and I think the substitution will wait until after this free kick is taken by Steve White.
Do you sense an equaliser here, Nick?
Not going to go too early. And there's the substitution. It is going to happen. And it is Jack Morton coming on for Ivan Franjic, whose evening comes to an end prematurely. It's a shame to see Franjic go down. And it will be Tommy Semi coming off here, and he'll be replaced by Saif Eddin Saki, who makes his Melbourne Knights debut. Welcome to NPL Victoria. And he's got just over 7 minutes and a bit of added time to potentially come up and write his name into, early Melbourne Knights folklore by scoring a goal here and maybe getting an equaliser for his side. Of course, the brother of former Melbourne City midfielder Hamza, who recently departed the club. So Steve White standing over this free kick. Plays it short. Ball whipped in. And it's headed. It eludes everyone, I think, in the end there. I don't think that any of the Melbourne Knights players got a touch to it, and the ball goes out for a goal kick.
I thought it did get a touch, but I'm not sure who the player in question
May have
was.
been Kieran Bramwell.
I think it is Bramwell. That's the thing about Knights tonight. They have just lacked that potency up front that you saw Harrison Sawyer display in those opening 5 minutes. I don't think they've played too badly. I don't think that they've also been that far off the level of South Melbourne. It's been quite a nip and tuck affair.
Strong challenge there from Steve White. going up for that header alongside Harrison Sawyer. A few extra seconds for the South Melbourne players to take off the clock as they close in on 3 points to kick off the new season. Harrison Sawyer with the goal that has South Melbourne in the lead. Feels like an eternity ago now that he opened the scoring as the boys floated in towards Sawyer, and it's out for a goal kick. So goal coming in around the 4th minute of the game and hit the post only seconds before that. There was a bit of conjecture about whether it crossed the line or not, but I was in that first chance he had, and then, of course, the second goal, there was no doubt about it.
Question for you. Do you think one of the potential weaknesses yet again of this South Melbourne team is the fact that it's the 3rd season in a row that they really had that one out-and-out number 9 who, if for whatever reason it was to be absent, like Sawyer was when he
Hold it for just a second as John Albano looks to break through, and Morgan Evans puts the ball out there for a corner. So an opportunity now for Knights.
I guess you saw it in 22 with Sawyer departing late on, React missing the grand final last year. You kind of hope that Sawyer stays healthy if you're a South Melbourne fan and is available for the big games, because they are a bit light in that department if you discount him.
Giselle whips it in towards the back post. Carrigan gets ahead to it, and it's cleared away by Jankovic. It was goal bound. I don't know if Harvey Lopez had it telegraphed anyway, but Jankovic just helped it on its way. Albano. Strong challenge from Evans, and a free kick one on the edge of the area. In a very dangerous position.
Is Evans on the yellow?
I'm not too sure, but it does look like that South Melbourne are about to make a substitution. It will be, by the look of Adam Bavkar's board, it will be Jack Payne-Andrews to come off and replaced by George Sitsinaris. But for now, South Melbourne need to worry about this free kick that Anthony Giselle is standing over. A natural in-swinging position for his right foot. Giselle pops it in, and Lopez just punches it away. It will come back to Giselle. Albano, strong touch. Brennan gets across, and Evans just helps it clear, but it's going straight back to Melbourne Knights players who will look to reset.
The one thing that will definitely take a bit of time getting used to, and one thing I'll definitely miss, is after a night like this where South Melbourne is in action, of reading Paul Mavridis' blog and his roundup of the game. Of course, shout out to Paul, one of the most loyal supporters in Victorian football. Has been
White whips it in, and it's headed clear by Jake Marshall. Carrigan will come back. Well, fed out to that right-hand side. Sorry, I think it was actually Sanchez or Morton that put that cross in. This was White who played that ball out there to that side, and the foul's given away. And it's going to be a free kick to South Melbourne. But you are right, though, Demir, that's something certainly we're going to miss this season, south of the border. Paul Mavridis' weekly blog, or, hopefully we'll still be able to get some specials here and there from Paul, because it was certainly a staple of your weekly reading after a South Melbourne game, as they will make a substitution here, South Melbourne. As mentioned, it'll be Payne-Andrews coming off, and he'll be replaced by George Sitsinaris, one of the youngsters who gets a nice little reception here.
Coming off, number 27, Jack Payne-Andrews, being replaced by number 80, George Sitsinaris.
It's always good to see players step up from the under-23 team, particularly with a player like Tsitsidanis. I assume he's been a South junior for an extensive period of time and gets to play in such a big fixture, a fixture that he would have dreamed of playing for quite a while.
Sawyer, flag is up for an offside, so close to 89 minutes played. Time is running out for Melbourne Knights if they want to get something from this game. To work their way through this. Morton. Here's Ben Carrigan. White. Franjic. Forced to reset again here. Carrigan. Sanchez.
Great turn.
Just lost his balance for a second, and Mario Barcia gets across to win it back, and he rides the challenge from Bramwell. Well played from Mario Barcia. Again, a very, very industrious and impressive league debut for South Melbourne.
I think after Marshall, he's probably been South's second best performer.
I think that's a very fair shout.
It's not easy when you've got, an opposing midfield featuring White and Drizel. But I think he's been impressive on debut, as you just remarked, Nick.
He's fitting seamlessly into this South Melbourne midfield. Has lost some key players in the likes of Marcus Schroen and Liram Almazi, and of course, leave that for a sec as Sitsaranis getting forward, but wasn't able to get in behind the Melbourne Knights defence and test there. Also lost Pat Langlar as well, head over to the States.
Yeah. Now, Nick, I'm not sure if you caught it. I've actually missed it. How many minutes of added time?
A few minutes here of added time to see what Melbourne Knights can do through Ben Carrigan. White. Ball played short to Sanchez. Cuts inside there, Sanchez. Here's Sewell. Looking for Sanchez again, but it's cleared away. Carrigan trying to potentially buy a few extra metres, but Astro Sakala's telling him to work his way back. White. Albano. Cuts inside. Just blue shirts everywhere, just clogging up the space, not allowing for Albano to get in behind or find that killer pass. Sanchez. Brought to ground by Barcia, and he wins the free kick. Dangerous position here. They take it quickly. Going to play it back through towards Saki. Haven't seen too much of since he's come on the field. And Jack Morton on that far side now, since both Franjic and Semi have come off. Sanchez recycles all the way back to Joseph Franjic. Morton. Route 1 football right into the area towards Bramwell. Saranis just clears it away. Safety first on that occasion. But Knights continue to ask the question. Carrigan. White. I think it's got to go almost straight into the area given this low block as Sewell feeds it short. Sets a task for Albano. He will get there. Franjic. Can he get forward? He fires. It's blocked there by Barcia. Calls for a handball from that Melbourne Knights bench, but Astro Sakalis ignores it. Jankovic. Saki rides the challenge, and the ball goes out for a throw-in. And it's going in South Melbourne's favour, and they can take a few precious seconds off the clock.
Do you think Melbourne Knights have done enough in this second half to deserve an equaliser? I would probably lean towards no. I don't think they've tested Javi Lopez enough. And as much as they would have liked as well to deserve to draw. But a lot can change in the next few seconds.
Well, all it will take is one moment if they are hoping to get an equaliser and get something from this game, but they've got to go. Seconds are running out. The whistles coming from the grandstand there at Lakeside Stadium. Sanchez, good touch. Gonna ride the challenge as he goes to ground, and it's a free kick.
Here we go.
This is it.
Will Chris Oldfield go up?
Well, I think that answer is no. Just simply because of where I think the free kick's taking place, Demir. I think it'll be all of the other 9 players in and around the area, or maybe more around 7, given we've got Albano waiting for the spill and also Steve White out there as well. Sorry, it's Safe Saki, who's just waiting on the edge of the area, but it will be Anthony Drizel standing over this one. Last chance saloon for Melbourne Knights. Giselle floats it in, and it's beaten everyone, and it's out for a goal kick. And again, more seconds come off the clock here for Melbourne Knights.
And that might be that, Nick. Just one of those nights for the Melbourne Knights where they've come close, but not close enough to really test Lopez in this second half. And that South Melbourne defence has proved to be resolute throughout.
Lopez just sends it long. All eyes on Astro Sakalis at the moment. Barcia just sends it forward. Franjic. Mikola puts him under some pressure. Carrigan just looking to go forward. Wallen sets a task for Mikola. Under immediate pressure there from Morton, and the ball goes out for a throw-in. He's going in Melbourne Knights' way. This is it. They've just got to go. They haven't got time to knock it around the back. In fact, there's no time at all. South Melbourne claim the first victory of the 2024 NPL Victoria season. A 1-0 win thanks to an early goal from Harrison Sawyer. And after they got that goal, Demir, they were too strong defensively and they were able to come away with the win, kicking off their season with exactly the way they would have hoped. A 1-0 victory here at Lakeside Stadium to send the South Melbourne fans home quite happy to kick off the new season.
Yeah, I think if you're South Melbourne, you'd be pleased with the result. Performance will get better. I think both teams will grow into the season. It had the makings of, a typical round one game for both sides where you saw the flashes of good. Overall, there's still a lot to be worked on, but if you're South Melbourne, it's a positive sign to see a lot of the hallmarks of what made them so good and effective last season on display on the opening night of the season. For the Melbourne Knights, I guess the worry that I have going forward with them is for all the good players that they have, it's just up front, do they have the potency to ultimately, especially games like this, test the very best in the competition? I think a very quiet evening from Bramwell. Albano and Semi had their moments, but they'll definitely need, the return of Sumayoro, Saki getting more minutes under his belt for us to see the best of them.
Well, Melbourne Knights back home for their first game at home of the new season in an elimination final rematch against Port Melbourne, while South Melbourne head on the road to take on Moreland City next Saturday afternoon. But a big thank you to everyone who has tuned in on YouTube today, on the NPL Victoria YouTube channel for this game. And a big thank you as well, Demir, for joining me on the call today. My name's been Nick Dabano, signing off from Lakeside Stadium. It's South Melbourne 1, Melbourne Knights 0. Thank you. Oh, yeah, I had some messages come through about the volume. I don't know what was going on.
I don't know whether